Okay, so our next little quick introduction or summary video here in this beginning series is about variables, something we really haven't talked about in class, but I want to give you guys just a taste, an introduction to it. There's a number of types of variables, and probably the 6 most common that we're going to be dealing with are right here, okay? They are a bool or a boolean. That just means it's a true or false. It's going to be either a 1 or a 0. Okay, it's really nice because it hardly uses any memory, super fast to process. And if all you need to do is 1 or 0, true or false, you might as well keep it as simple as possible. The next one is going to be a character. Literally, that's just one letter, one key on your keyboard. Okay, that's all it is. It has a value inside its little computer memory that goes between a negative 128 to 127. Don't worry about that right now, but it's a small piece of information. It's just one letter on a keyboard. And when I characterize it as a character, okay, it's going to take a number, all right, it's going to associate it with a number, but it's going to associate that number to a specific letter. Okay, in this case I chose an A. The next one is going to be a byte. A byte is also a small piece of memory. It's an 8-bit byte, it's only 8 bits. And the largest number it can hold is 255 because it can actually only go from 0 to 256. And we'll explain that as well a little bit later on, but for right now just realize you can't put a big number in there, and I'll show you what happens when you do. The next one is, so we've got bool, character, byte, integer. We have played with that a little bit. And it can be, well, it has quite a range. Okay, so this is your low value, this is your high value. Okay? And then we have a float, which is of the same range, but notice this, a float can handle a decimal place. All right, so you can actually put any value you want within this range, but it can have a decimal place. An integer cannot have a decimal place. Integers are just integers. Floats have decimal places. And last but far from least is a string. A string is a group of characters, a number of characters that are strung together. Okay, so a string is a whole string of characters. And in each one of these cases here, I have created a variable. I could have called it anything, okay? So these are the names that I came up with. No, I didn't even do this right. I really should have made that stick with the proper way of doing this with my camel back. I did a couple times and it seems to have screwed up a couple of times. And then I'll have to change it here as we talk about it. Let me do it right now before I forget. Okay, so I've named it these names. You know, this is to tell me this is a local, and I'll explain that. But these are the names that I've chosen, and I've stuck some values in. And of course, here you can see all I'm doing is printing them. Okay, I'm simply printing them. So let's run this. It shouldn't be any different than what it was running on the screen right now. And you can see that this is in a function called local variables, and local variables is being called here within my loop. So it's being called every iteration of the loop. There is a 1 second or 1,000 millisecond delay down here that keeps it pulsing at a nice rate. And like I said, I had originally set L value, the bool, to be true. If I put in a false, okay, you'll see that 1 is going to switch to a 0. Okay, so it is a boolean. It's going to be 1 or 0, and there you see it. It's changed to a 0. And like I said, I can put any value in here. I'll put a D. All right, so now I've created a character variable named L letter instead of D in there. Watch what happens when I put more than one character. Now, let's do something like this. Alright, so now I'm trying to shove more characters into my character variable. But you see, it just doesn't get it. It gave up, so it only gets the F. right? So you can only have one character in a character variable. Notice this also uses a single quote. Okay. Next in line is my byte I'm printing, okay, which in this case is 255. And watch what happens here when I put in, say, 259. When I run 259, remember it only goes to 255. Well, what it's going to do is it's actually going to roll over and it gives me a 3. Okay? Well, that's because 256 starts over again. So 256 is now a 0. 257 is now a 1. 252 is now a 2. And 250, what number did I choose? 259 is now a 3. Okay? So every time if it goes over 255, the process starts over again, and it starts recounting from 0. So 259 actually shows up as 3, okay, because it had to start over again. The biggest number I can put in there is 255. All right, so now we've introduced these. An integer, I think we've dealt with it before. It could be any number up into that size. So I'll put in here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see that when I run it, I end up with an integer value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 123,456. The float, okay, I've got the same number, but I have in fact put a decimal place in here. So when I print the float, okay, you can see I end up with 1.23. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Don't I want something bigger than that? It's 1.23456. Well, all right. I'll show you that in just a moment, and how we can get that number bigger. Okay. And then last but far from least is my string. Like I said, it's a group of characters. Here, notice it's double quote. It is not single quote. And I can say whatever. You know, I can say, hey there. Okay. And when I run it, you can see it pops up. Now, an important thing about this is notice how I've created all of these variables here inside this loop. I'm sorry, inside this function. They are contained within this function. These are called local variables. They only work inside this function. Okay? So I've created another function down here, and let me go ahead and comment that out. By the way, if you've ever seen me block comment a bunch of things, what I do is I select it. It could just be anywhere on there. And if I hit Control/ or Command/, you can see it comments them all out. And I can bring them back just as easily just by using that simple keystroke. So I'm going to comment that out, and I'm going to bring this back. Okay? And I don't want to forget to change these to capitals, because that is a B, and that is an I. And you say to yourself, wow, if I call this function global variables, let me go up to my loop and call that. So I'm going to comment out local and call a global. I have all these variables here. They're certainly the right names, but it doesn't get it. It says right here, L value is not declared within that scope. Okay? Well, it turns out, like I said, if it's a local variable, it only works within that particular function. But I can make them global. All right? So here at the top, notice it's above setup. Okay? It's above setup right here. I have what I call global variables. And I should change this to a capital V and this to a capital I. And in this demonstration, I've decided to name them slightly different. I've given them a G designation so that I know that these are my global variables. I've got them so I can use them in any function now. For global, I don't have to recreate them, and I can use them in any function. So if I go down here, and I comment out this block, and if I open up this block, and again, I need to correct that and that. Okay. You can see now that even though the variables are not created in this function, it still works fine because my variables are in fact global. Okay, so I can change that to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can change this to a whatever, a y, and voila. So now these are global variables, and I can access them from any function. Okay. So here I'll do it. Well, I'll just create one more fun function. I'll just call. I'll make one quick fun function, and I'll do it. I'll just call it fun function, and I'm just going to delete all that junk, and I'm going to change my name, and all I'm going to do is print the string. Okay, and I'll call my fun function from here. Oops, I thought I called it fun function. And I'll comment that. Yep. And I load it. And even though, whoops, I meant to put this in here. So sorry. Try that again. So even though this particular function has no variables declared, nothing declared at all, none of this kind of stuff, it still works because I'm using a global variable, and that global variable is up here above setup. Okay? Local global variables and being able to print them is something you're going to need to do. No, you're going to be using it quite a bit. So I'll be back again here shortly, and you can continue moving forward. I'll see you in a few.